Sometimes the biggest stories in politics don't happen in Washington. And right now, the biggest political earthquake in America just happened right here, in New York City. And yeah, the results are in. In an outcome that pretty much nobody in the political establishment saw coming, New York City has a brand new leader. Get this, his name is Zohran Mamdani. He is just 34 years old, he's a Democratic socialist, and he just won what everyone calls the second toughest job in America. So of course the big question on everyone's mind is, who is this guy, and how in the world did he pull this off? To really understand the shockwave this sent through the country, you first have to get just how historic this victory actually is. Okay, let's start with that number. 34. That is his age. It makes Zohran Mamdani the youngest mayor to lead New York City in over 100 years. This isn't just a new face showing up at City Hall. This is a whole new generation taking over. And it's not just about his age. His win just shatters one ceiling after another. He's New York's very first Muslim mayor, its first South Asian mayor, and its first mayor born in Africa. For a city that's always called itself the world's melting pot, its leadership is now, for the first time, really starting to look like it. And Mamdani himself seems to get exactly what he's up against. In his very first press conference, he dropped this line. It's a pretty powerful way to say, okay, the big, inspiring speeches are over, now the real work starts. The messy, day-to-day grind of actually running this city. So how does somebody even get from Kampala, Uganda to the steps of New York City Hall? Well, let's just say his path was anything but traditional. He was born to a world-famous filmmaker and a well-known academic, and he landed in New York as a kid. But here's the interesting part. After college, he didn't go to law school, he didn't go to Wall Street. No, he went straight to the front lines of one of New York's biggest crises, housing. And this job, housing counselor, it's really the key to understanding his entire political identity. This wasn't just some job to build up a resume. He was down in the trenches, fighting evictions, helping regular New Yorkers try to navigate this brutal system. That hands-on experience, it became the bedrock of his entire career. But look, this victory wasn't just about one person's story. It was about this incredible political machine that basically rewrote the rulebook on how you win an election. Okay, get ready for some numbers because they're kind of staggering. The campaign, along with groups like the Democratic Socialist of America, they mobilized an army of 50,000 volunteers. And they didn't just sign up, they got to work. They hit the streets, and they knocked on an incredible 1.6 million doors all across the city. And then, after all that, they hit the phones, and they made another 2.3 million calls. This wasn't a campaign won with fancy TV ads. This was a victory built conversation by conversation on pure people power. So you're probably wondering, how did you manage an army that big without it just falling into total chaos? Well, this right here is their secret sauce, a 4-tiered model. It's basically this pyramid of empowerment that turns passionate newcomers into really effective leaders. It let the whole movement grow in a way that traditional campaigns just can't. And this quote from one of the organizers, Michael Carter, just nails it. Everyone was paying attention to Mamdani's slick social media. But as he points out, a viral video is easy to get. A complex logistical machine, that's not. And that machine, the part most of us never even saw, that's what actually delivered the win. So what exactly was this giant army fighting for? Well, a platform that his critics were very quick to call radical. But let's take a closer look, shall we? Okay, so he's calling for free public transit. In the US, that sounds pretty wild, right? Except in places like Tallinn, Estonia, or even the entire country of Luxembourg, it's just a normal public service. And it's the same story with universal childcare. Here, it's a huge, endless debate. But in Germany or all across Scandinavia, it's just seen as a basic building block for a modern economy. Now, what about his most explosive idea, a rent freeze? Well, even here, there's a surprising local precedent. During the de Blasio administration, the city's rent guidelines board actually did vote to freeze rents on stabilized apartments 4 different times. So while it's definitely controversial, it's not totally unheard of here in New York. Of course, that doesn't mean the critics are quiet. Not at all. You have heavy hitters, like former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, making that classic economic argument that rent control is absolute poison for a city's housing market. This one issue perfectly sums up the huge, high-stakes debate at the very heart of Mamdani's agenda. And that brings us to the monumental task he has ahead of him. The campaign is over, the victory party is done, now he actually has to govern. And the headwinds he's facing are fierce. We're talking about managing a sprawling coalition, staring down a hostile president who's threatening to pull funding, and living up to these sky-high global expectations, all while just dealing with the daily crises that make New York, well, New York. And then there's this question of experience. His critics are very quick to point to his legislative record. In his 5 years in the state assembly, he was the lead sponsor on 3 bills that became law. 2 of them were about public participation, and 1 was a super local bill for a museum in Queens. The argument is this the resume for America's toughest job? His supporters would say he was focused on organizing a movement, not on making deals in Albany. So in the end, it really all comes back to his own words. His movement proved, against all odds, that it could write beautiful, powerful poetry. But now, the entire world is watching to see if Mayor Mamdani can deliver on the much harder, much messier, and frankly, much more important prose of governing.